Some of you may become somewhat uncomfortable as parts of this film unfold, but I think if you listen carefully...
Nature has intended to give you an appropriate
A healthy, happy sex life is a nuisance. Wonderful and terribly unpleasant. We've all experienced curiosity about ourselves and the opposite sex. Who hasn't?
Hello, I'm Megan.
I'm Marcella.
And I'm Colin.
And I'm Alix. And this is Remedial Sex Ed.
Woo!
Great job.
Well done.
Did you like it? Did I do good?
You did good. I don't know why I had to be so aggressive with my compliment.
I need aggressive compliments.
Great. I can provide.
Woo!
Yes. Yeah, welcome, listener, to part 2 on our series about abortion and politics of the day. This is the politics episode. We've established our bias. We all are pro-choice here. And now we're going to dig into why we feel that these bills are, as you say, awful.
Are, as I say, awful.
Yeah. So should we start with Bama?
Bama.
Alabama.
Bama, why you do this?
Alabama. For context, women hold 22 of 140 seats in the Alabama legislature.
Nailed it.
This was proposed. The primary sponsor was a woman for this bill, and it was signed and enacted by a woman.
The governor?
Yes, the governor. Governor Kay Ivey.
Hold up. I have a question, Alex, because people bring that up a lot, that the governor is a woman who signed it into action. Did she really logistically have any other choice other than to sign it? Like,
You can veto a bill.
you can?
Yeah. Governor Herbert's done it a few times for, like, there was a sex ed bill where they were like, only abstinence, period, that got passed through legislature. And Governor Herbert was like, nah.
Thank you.
And
Oh,
that
look
was
at him.
basically the only time that I was like, whoa. Nice job.
Yes. Good.
I didn't
A
expect that from you,
very
Yeah.
Mr. Herbert.
Basic low bar
I-
of decency there.
Yeah, I watched her signing event, and she was on board.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's blah, 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 politics episode. That's kind of the problem with this, is that, like, yes, there are some women who are pro-life and anti-choice. And so basically a fuckload of rich old white men who aren't even in the risk of having children anymore, let alone ever having the risk of being pregnant, are grabbing a token woman to support their bill.
Yes.
So that we can be like, see, women are behind this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, look, there's a lot of fucking people in this world. Yeah, there's going to be some
20% of our
anti-choice
population.
women.
Yeah.
It's not just men,
Yeah.
but it's mostly men.
Yeah.
Let's be real, it's mostly men.
From what I'm reading, and you can tell me much better, basically, to quote it, the only time that abortion shall be permitted is if a licensed physician in Alabama determines that an abortion is necessary in order to prevent a serious health risk to the unborn child's mother, except in the case of a medical emergency as defined herein. The physician's determination shall be confirmed in writing by a second physician licensed in Alabama. An abortion performed in violation of this act is a Class A felony. Can you, just for context, tell us what is Class A felony?
So, that's a big felony. Presumably. It's going to be different depending on your jurisdiction. But yeah, that's probably your big felony. Something like premeditated murder would go up there.
Yeah. And then another very important and very specific aspect of this bill is they go into what serious health risk to the unborn mother is. So it's the child's mother has a condition that so complicates her medical condition that it necessitates the termination of her pregnancy in order to avert death or to avert serious risk of substantial physical impairment of a major bodily function. This term does not include a condition based on a claim that the woman is suffering from an emotional condition or a mental illness, which will cause her to engage in a conduct that intends to result in her death or the death of her unborn child. So that's pretty specific.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's not great. This is part of there is no clause saying that if it is rape or incest.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
And I think that's the case for Georgia as well, isn't it? Oh, it does make exceptions for rape and incest.
Yes. Alabama is the one who
Alabama
locked it down and said
all-out ban.
they're in.
Oh, and it's an all-out ban. There's
Yes.
not even the 6 weeks. Okay, so Bama's the bad. Georgia's pretty bad, but Bama's like outright unconstitutional
Yes.
bad. I mean, they're all unconstitutional.
Yes.
It's fine. I'm fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
This is fine.
I have a question for you in regards to Bama, and this might be jumping a few steps.
Cool.
Everyone seems to think that these 3 cases were specifically orchestrated to make it to the Supreme Court with the specific goal of overturning the various abortion cases.
Oh, that's
and
almost
precedents.
certainly what they're doing.
That is exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
There are interviews with the head prosecutor. Oh, man. He is the attorney. Sorry. The attorney that is in charge of the Bama bill has gone out and said, like, we think now is the time.
Well, and it's in the bill's language.
It is?
The
Really?
Alabama. Well, I mean, okay, if the Alabama bill is like 5 years of preamble that's just a bunch of offensive shit. And then they're like, by the way, here's the actual law, we're banning abortion. Like, did you read it?
Yeah.
Literally,
Yes.
they bring in like, by the way, a bunch of Jews were murdered in the Holocaust, and you're like, those are not the same thing.
It's
You cunts.
inflammatory. They go into like all of these people. Look at the scale of this murder. And if you compare it to how many murders have been done of unborn children, it is minute. Like, it is a small number compared to how many times we've murdered unborn kids.
Right.
It's brutal.
Totally
the preamble
comparable.
is
Yeah.
brutal.
Giving women the right to make decisions about their reproductive health care is exactly the same thing as genocide.
Yep.
I guess what I'm getting at with Bama is, it seems like this is such an overreach of constitutional rights. And, like, I get that they're trying to get this to overturn precedent, but it's something that is so offensively unconstitutional. Doesn't it have, like, no hope of doing that? Like, if they made something that was a little bit more middle ground, wouldn't have had a bigger effect than something that someone could clearly look at and say, a lot of this is...
Yeah. So, I mean, that's basically what I came here to talk about. That is the thing. And I have some good news, and I have some bad news, and I have just news. Just news. So...
Rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah. So legal experts are currently arguing about this. Like, there's no actual consensus on what's really going to happen, because we do have right now a 5-4 Supreme Court that's leaning conservative. And, you know, Roberts has basically outright said that he's down to ban abortion outright, and Thomas has been voting against abortion since the dawn of man. Alito has been going against abortion since the dawn of man. And we now have 2 Supreme Court justices that were appointed by our super, super conservative administration. So since Roe, but really since the 80s, since the mid-80s, they've been trying to slowly nick away at our abortion rights. Things like waiting periods, trap laws. And they've gotten most of them through. They didn't get the requirement to notify and get permission from your husband. That wasn't found constitutional. But the waiting periods, the misleading informed consent material that's required, weird requirements on discussing the baby in very kind of disturbing and misleading ways. Those kinds of requirements have all gotten through. And so basically the goal for anti-choicers has been to slowly nick away at our rights until we don't have any more. And so what this is they're like, oh, fuck yeah, we've got a conservative court. Let's just fucking go for it. And so my good news and my bad news is we do have a conservative court. So it could actually lead to the overturning of Roe. The good news, though, is the Supreme Court has been making some weird decisions lately. They've been voting conservative on things that the country doesn't care about, you know, that's not super politicized, that's not super in the news. But for stuff that is in the news, like, I don't know if you guys were paying attention when those 2 death penalty cases came out right next to each other, and it was like, this Muslim dude, he's fucked, but this Buddhist dude, he's fine. And everyone was like, what are you fucking doing, you crazy bastards? Basically, what's probably happening is that Kavanaugh, because of his very, very public and controversial appointment, and Roberts, because of how much the Supreme Court is in the news these days, is trying to maintain this appearance of nonpartisanship, which is important for the Supreme Court. It should be nonpartisan. It's not, but it should be. And so there is a possibility that because these are so blatantly unconstitutional, and because literally the president is like live tweeting about how the Supreme Court is going to do as he says for abortion, they may not overturn Roe as a political statement.
Gotcha.
But that's such a complicated, like, political analysis that falls completely outside of the legal analysis. Is like, what are people's internal experiences of the outward political? And I don't know.
Well, it's interesting you bring up that it is such a debate in the legal sphere right now, because I was just with my mom. She's in D.C. She's going to law school.
Oh boy.
I know, right? When I saw her last, she was, like, convinced that Roe v. Wade was going to get overturned. Like, it's interesting to hear that it is such a debate, because where she's at right now in her various classes and talking about it, she is hella scared.
Yeah. I'm scared, too. And, like, I heard it was a debate between one of the main women who argued Casey and this dude who's a big pro-lifer who writes books and is part of the, you know, anti-choice movement. It's kind of weird. The pro-choice woman, her name is Catherine Colbert. She thought that Roe was going to get overturned because of our
Casey.
Yeah. Because of our 5-4 court justice. And then Clark Forsyth is senior counsel at Americans United for Life. And he thinks that it's not getting overturned. And I just thought that was really interesting that, you know, basically both people weren't getting their hopes up.
Yeah.
And so I can't really tell you, because I really don't know.
You can't
because
predict the
greater
future?
legal scholars than I, and by greater I mean substantially greater, are unsure, you know?
I guess that's good. I mean, that gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, basically, it's better than completely Black Abyss Darkness Doom, but
yeah.
it might still be Black Abyss Darkness Doom.
Yeah, I think
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time in its history that the court has had to, like, exert its independence over the executive.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that's a really deft analysis, and, like, that was not something that I had thought about before, that the court would refuse to overturn it. I don't know.
refuse to see the case. They have the ability
just
to say this is unconstitutional. The lower courts.
That's actually what I'm hoping.
That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, my
faith.
fingers are crossed, because if it does go to the Supreme Court, what they might do is not explicitly overturn Roe v. Wade, but still allow a huge increase to abortion restrictions.
Yeah.
By oh fuck, words.
That might be even worse.
Segregation. Nope. Severance. Haha, that's the word. By severing the, the unconstitutional bits from the constitutional bits.
Yeah.
Basically allowing more abortion restrictions by a lot because it is a very conservative court.
Which is how Casey ended up. Like it wasn't an agreed ruling. It was like, okay, well, this thing and then this thing, like splitting up the decision, which I think I have zero faith in Alabama being held constitutional. Like I have Bama is too far. Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump have both distanced themselves from that bill. They both are saying, okay, you've gone too far.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the idea of losing abortion in the United States is real. I have zero faith that is going to happen. My concern is what Alix was saying. Yeah, I think there's a chance that they lower when states can actually start enacting laws, which is what the Georgia bills and the heartbeat bills are trying to pursue, is saying like, hey, at 6 weeks, they have heartbeats. So.
Which essentially makes abortion illegal.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And that is definitely concerning. But I am still in the camp that the Supreme Court is going to be like, we have precedents. Yeah. We don't need to rule on this.
So my hope for like best case scenario is the lower courts find them unconstitutional because they are.
Yes.
And because the lower courts find them unconstitutional, the Supreme Court says, we have nothing to decide here, denies certiorari, which allows the lower court's decisions to stand.
Yeah.
And we keep Casey as it is.
Yes.
That's what my fingers are crossed
That's
for.
my dream. Yes.
If it does make it to the Supreme Court, I think no matter how it's decided, it's not going to be great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, they're either going to take away abortion entirely or they're going to limit it substantially.
Question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Megan.
Okay, so these states... this is
Heartbeat
where
bill
my
states?
knowledge of law is like totally lacking. So what they're arguing for is the right for the individual state to restrict it to an extreme level. If the Supreme Court rules on these guys, do those restrictions make it a state-by-state case, or do those restrictions apply to the entire country?
It would probably bring it back to the states.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is not okay. I'm not
It is
arguing
currently-
for that.
Well, it would make it so that a couple of liberal states would be these weird bastions for abortion.
Yeah.
Like Oregon or Washington recently passed like a very, very liberal abortion bill.
Colorado.
And Colorado's pretty progressive.
Yeah.
But it would basically make it so that the South, you couldn't receive an abortion, and your Midwest, you couldn't receive an abortion. And basically you would have to go to the East Coast and Northeast Coast or the West Coast.
Yeah, the coasts.
You would have to go to the coast, the coast, and not the South.
Yeah.
In order to receive an abortion, which would essentially, I mean, that's the whole problem with like the way that these affect marginalized people, is that you've got a bunch of people who can't afford travel expenses, who are going to be severely limited in their ability to control their reproductive rights, whereas it's going to make it really inconvenient and difficult for like your wealthy white women who are capable of traveling without too much difficulty, but it's going to ultimately they're going to be fine. But it's your women in poverty and your
People
women
with
in
uteruses
abusive
in poverty,
relationships, who are going to not be able to
leave their state, travel to a place.
Queer kids, you know.
Yeah.
And that's
but that's happening now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's already an issue that we have in the United States. This would make it far worse.
Yeah.
But
that was actually a thing that I believe Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, was that if we full on ban abortion, I mean, because it's not going to ban it nationwide, it's going to make it so that states can
decide.
Ban abortion.
Yeah.
It's going to make it so that things are basically the way that they already are.
Yeah.
But to another degree, because, currently, the states are still required to provide access to abortion. Like even Texas still has like one clinic that provides abortion.
Yeah, John Oliver kind of talked about this in his show Last Week Tonight. He actually went into a thorough job where he investigated some of the states where you are technically required to provide like one clinic. Yeah. And it's like a clinic for several hundred miles, and it's only open like twice a week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you said, if this goes to the Supreme Court, it'll probably go to a state-by-state basis where you don't require the states to provide abortion in any circumstance. So I would just encourage, yeah. I mean, I kind of want to harken back to what you said, Alex, that like the wealthier white women are always gonna like. For me, I picture the mistresses, the wives and daughters of all the legislators who wrote these bills. They're the ones who are going to be fine. They'll be able to fly to California or wherever when they want to get an abortion. But it's poor people, it's queer people, it's people of color who are in the South who are going to suffer from this. And so I would encourage any of our any of our listeners who are on the fence or who maybe consider themselves pro-life to like really think about the motive behind these bills and the kind of people, the kind of like callous disregard for the plight of marginalized people that this represents. I mean, it's really, I'll say it, I'm not afraid. It's another form of class warfare is what this is. It's exerting control over a class of people with uteruses who already have such limited control over their situation and over their lives. And it's just another thumb pressing down on them to control them and get them to conform. I mean, I don't even know what the end game is here. It's just another method of repression.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about state laws and kind of the individual state-by-state situation, so I texted you this question before you came on because I was very confused.
Yeah.
Okay? So, Georgia is trying to make it that if they find out you had an abortion in another state, you can still get arrested in Georgia for something that was legal in another state. Now, at first, I was confused because it's precedent that if something is legal, like Nevada in gambling, or Colorado in marijuana, and if you, as a citizen, do something in that state, you can't be arrested when you go back to your home state where that activity is illegal, because where you were, that was perfectly legal. But you explained how Georgia is doing logic to enforce that law.
If it's a non-resident who has had an abortion and then comes to Georgia, Georgia has no jurisdiction. But basically, what's most likely is they're going to try to use a conspiracy, which conspiracy is basically planning to do something illegal. And so, although they can't charge you with, murder of a fetus when you've left the state and done it legally elsewhere, they're going to charge you with essentially the thought crime of planning to leave the state to do something that's illegal. And, I mean, if you go and you smoke pot in Colorado and you come back to a state where it's not legal and they drug test you and you're positive for THC, they'll still charge you.
Oh.
So
I didn't know
that is just one of those weird, complicated holes in the law that we have right now. But yeah, most likely what they're gonna try to do is a conspiracy theory. Sorry, that makes it sound weird. The legal theory of conspiracy to charge people who want to get an abortion outside of the state.
As a lawyer, how easy do you think that is going to be to enforce?
Probably not very easy, honestly. But they put it in the bill as as another, hey, we want to make it known that we control you and we control your life.
Let's say in theory this passes.
It did.
But, gets to remain a law.
Okay.
Because this is being challenged, right? Immediately by the ACLU.
Yeah, it's not currently, so the neither of these laws is actually what is currently the case. Abortion is still legal in both Bama and Georgia. And if I recall correctly, the one goes into effect in November and one goes into effect in January, and they were
Georgia's
both
January.
already being sued over it.
So, I guess I'm just wondering, like, because this whole idea of being a resident in Georgia who, like, had an abortion elsewhere, like, let's say your job forces you to move to Georgia after having lived in one of the blue states, as it were. Like, can they do conspiracy for murder on a previous abortion, even if it's been, like, several years in the past?
I highly doubt that, because you wouldn't be able to... I mean, you wouldn't have jurisdiction over the conspiracy in that case.
So it's only if you were a resident in Georgia, you left.
To get an abortion.
Okay.
Yeah. And again,
It's
I
still
think that it
pretty
would be
fucked up.
really hard to prove, and I've heard that there's a lot of prosecutors that are like, we're not going to prosecute on these laws.
It does sound very difficult to prove.
There's a lot of problems with these. Like, there's a lot of things that come up. Like, giving personhood to a fetus has a lot of problems.
Yes.
Or
Or even the heartbeat rule itself, which I wanted to dive into, is like
because it's heartbeat cells, not actually
there
heart
isn't a
beating.
heart
Yeah.
beating at that point.
It's just heartbeat cells, which
Yes.
is individual cells that are beating.
Yeah,
But
the
they're not
nervous
pumping
system
blood.
hasn't been like cardiovascular system hasn't like it's
Yeah. Well, I mean, so that's the reason. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that I'm pro-choice, but that's one of the reasons that I'm pro-choice, like, to the extent that I'm pro-choice, is these people don't understand what they're regulating.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand what you're regulating, then you shouldn't be regulating it.
I think my favorite example of that was who was it? The legislator that was saying that they would move ectopic pregnancies.
Oh my God, that was, I wanted to explode.
It was hilarious how someone could support a bill and also not know how uteruses work.
You mean
Everyone. Yeah, every one of them. But like, how do you get something so wrong? How do you create a medical procedure in your brain?
Well, I mean, so that's the problem. I mean, again, you get this with like the furthering of technology, of medical technology, is that like we have a better understanding, which makes it easier for us to spread misinformation. So like we are now aware that there are these beating cells, and so we think that that's a heart,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. You know, after Roe v. Wade, the belly thing.
Ultrasound scan?
Ultrasound.
Ah.
Thank you. I'm going to make a great trial attorney. Don't worry, I have notes. But yeah, after Roe v. Wade, the ultrasound technology got like way, 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 way better. And that furthered the like dissonance in our country over whether or not that was a real life, because you could kind of see a baby in a pregnant person.
Yeah, we have this medical technology that makes it easy to see the fetus as it's forming, and if you sort of squint hard enough, it starts to look like a baby, and, you know, we can hear what sounds like a heartbeat, but is really like the very foundations of what is actually a human heart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the very basic, the most basic building blocks, but we mistake it for the thing itself, and so we're sort of like projecting humanity onto something that is not that is, you know, just in its most basic stages.
Anyone who shows me an ultrasound photo and they're like, "Can you see the baby?" I've never been able to see it.
Right.
No.
I looked at my little sisters. I looked at my little brothers. Like, I could never see it. I've had pregnant friends who bring it, and I'm like, it looks like a dark hole.
I have
Yeah,
no
I've
idea
never
how
been
they can
able to
tell the
see it.
sex.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can usually kind of like, oh, yeah, that's a bean shape. I see it. That's probably the thing.
No.
But when they're like, oh, it's a girl, I'm like, it's just white
It's
and
a
black
blob.
blurbs.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that it does or
a
does not
blob.
have a penis?
It's just a bean.
It's a bean. How does bean? Okay, but there was one point in the Roe decision that I actually specifically copy pasted because I thought it was a really, really great example of the reason that I am pro-choice. That says essentially we don't need to determine where life begins because when those trained in the respective disciplines of medicine, philosophy, and theology are unable to arrive at any consensus, the judiciary at this point of the development of man's knowledge is not in a position to speculate as to the answer.
Dang.
Basically, we, like, better minds can't decide, so we oughtn't.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
And so, and I mean that again goes back to the pro-choice thing. It's like, if you think that as soon as an egg has touched a sperm, that's a life, then that's a life for you. And you can decide what you want to do with that. But if somebody else doesn't feel that way, because it's a completely subjective thing right now, it's not your business.
What I found really interesting is I have a friend who works like as a paramedic, and I think, oh man, I should have written this down, but she said in a medical emergency with someone who's pregnant, so it's only after 22 weeks, I think it was 22 weeks, does that person get taken to a level 1 medical hospital, like a level 1 emergency, because you have 2 patients. Until then, that the person who is pregnant is just taken to whatever the closest emergency area is, because they are treating it as only 1 patient. Mm-hmm. There's no way the unborn fetus would survive at that point. So they do not give it personhood. Yeah. They go to whatever is necessary to save the live pregnant person.
Yeah.
So it's just funny, not funny. It just blows my mind that we have all of these. We've looked into what is feasible for a fetus to survive outside of the womb, like what viability is. And all of these bills are just basing viability on emotional reaction and religious reaction, really, and not basing it in fact at all.
Yeah.
And that's really hard and offensive to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. Again, another reason that I'm pro-choice is a corpse has more bodily autonomy than I do.
Yes. Get into this.
If you don't check the little yes box on I'm a donor on your fucking driver's license, then when you are dead and you're dead and you don't need your organs because you're dead, they can't steal your organs to save a life because you forgot to say I'm an organ donor.
Yeah.
And I don't have the same rights as a dead person.
Yeah.
And I mean, same with like donating blood, which is a very it is a relatively non-invasive thing. Like I've donated blood many, many times. It doesn't
matter how simple the procedure is.
Nobody can force you to donate blood.
Yeah.
And like, yes, it is inside me, the thing that you are trying to say is a life, and therefore if I decide to detach myself from it, I am murdering it. But it is my body.
Yeah.
And if you can't steal my organs when I'm dead, then you shouldn't be allowed to control my organs while I'm alive.
Yes.
Because, I mean, your argument of like, oh, it's a life. Yeah, but what about my life? I am a living person, not a potential person.
Yeah.
And and that's always bothered me, is that, like, there's never any deference to the currently living person versus the potential person.
Yeah.
And God, I have like a laundry list of reasons that I am pro-choice.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that essentially these bills are trying to define personhood at 6 weeks.
Yes, at heartbeat.
The heartbeat bills
we
are.
have on this show multiple times discussed how difficult it is to get pregnant and how many pregnancies do not come fully to term.
Oh yeah,
70%.
So goddamn many
of embryos.
Yeah.
So, what is the legal precedent for a pregnancy that terminates itself after 6 weeks? Because that's possible.
Right. Well,
is that woman supposed to feel like a killer?
Well, that's what these bills are.
I mean, I don't think that there's any legal precedent.
There isn't any legal precedent, but that's something that is being discussed with these bills. Is it's like, are you going to look into
for miscarriages?
Yeah, manslaughter charges for miscarriages,
which is some bullshit because miscarrying is so goddamn common.
30% of known pregnancies.
Yes, yeah, no, it's very, very common. Even for like, I'm aware. I'm trying to be good. And then imagine how common it is for, I'm just fucking around, I'm just living my life.
Yeah.
You know? Because, like, a ton of babies are fucking, conceived when you're, like, drunk and partying, because that's a thing that you do. That's maybe not how I was conceived. It's cool. And, you know, like, let's say that you don't know you're pregnant, you're still drinking. That's probably going to, you know, have an easier time miscarrying, but you don't know you're pregnant. So is just living your life as a college student now manslaughter, you know?
Yeah.
And that's basically what they're trying to imply, which again goes back to like, this isn't about the life of the fetus or the life of the mother or the life of anything. This is about controlling women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you start
That's
talking about regulating miscarriages, this is about controlling women.
Okay, quick question for you. I don't know if you know the answer for this.
Okay.
So, Alabama's gotten a lot of press for its bill.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia's gotten a lot of press for its bill.
Mm-hmm.
Is Ohio just hanging out, or what's going on there?
I mean, there's a couple of states that... I think there's 4 states
Kentucky?
that have... I thought Kentucky just decided that abortion was a constitutional right. I thought Kentucky did the good. It was Missouri, I believe.
Missouri, yeah. Yes, thank you.
And they're probably all getting joined in the legal cases. Just like...
I think the reason that they're being grouped is it's becoming a series of heartbeat laws. Mm-hmm. Like they're very similar in their structure and what their objectives are. I think the special attention is going to Alabama because it is so extra.
So extra.
And then Georgia because it does have things like prosecution if you leave the state and get an abortion in another state and other things like that.
Yeah. I think a part of it is how public they're making it. You know, I think some of these states are kind of trying to like sneak in there, which happens a lot with anti-abortion laws, is just sort of like sneaking these little things in. Like Utah finally passed their anti-disability abortion law, where anti-abortion disability law, basically you're no longer allowed to abort if you find out there's a fetal anomaly.
Yeah.
Which is super. But yeah, I think a big difference is just how public the legislators are being.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I can't imagine that they're not getting joined in these cases. All of the heartbeat abortion bans.
At 6 weeks, that is almost like just saying abortion is not allowed anymore because a lot of people don't know at 6 weeks.
You have had one missed period.
Yeah. Yeah. And
how many people actually track their periods?
Let's just break this down.
Right.
For people who do not have uteruses and do not understand how periods work, they are not always regular. I have never in my life had a regular period until I was on
Birth
the
control?
pill. The
That
pill.
regulated it specifically?
Yes, that specifically regulated
That's why
it.
I went on birth control in high school.
Yeah, like and that was wonderful. And I've since switched to an IUD, which people say, oh, it means it goes away forever. Nah, like here to tell you my experience. I am
It
back
went
to
away for
having
me.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm super jealous. A lot of people it goes away and that's awesome. But for me, it's like back to, I don't know, like for my first IUD, I had it once a quarter. Like every 3 months or so.
That's not bad.
And then, since now it's like, oh, sometimes it's 6 weeks, sometimes it's 4 weeks, sometimes it's 3 weeks. Like it isn't a thing that you can just be like, yep, now is today I'm supposed to have my period. I do not have my period. I guess I'm pregnant. That's not a thing.
Yeah. No, unless you are trying to get pregnant, you don't know your cycle that well.
No, and there are definitely measures. There's the contraceptive method of making yourself
Rhythms?
aware. Yes, rhythms and all of that. So there are people who are very much aware of when their period is coming, but
Most people.
I
are not
was going to
that.
say that's the
I'm
minority.
Not,
Yeah.
Are all three of the women on this podcast not totally in tune with like what their month is supposed to be?
Have zero
I
idea.
haven't had a period in 4 years.
So there you go.
My IUD is fucking working it.
Nice. That's great. I don't blame my IUD. I blame my uterus. I think it hates me.
Before I
As most uteruses do.
Yeah.
They are big tantrumy babies.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm on Marcella's side. Well, I'm on both of your sides because my IUD has also stopped my period. But before that, I was like, it's here when it wants to be.
Oh, yeah.
When it feels like it.
Well, I mean,
And
that's why
stress.
I went on birth control.
Yeah.
Was because, like, as a teenager, which is also one of the marginalized classes that is going to be hyper affected by anti-abortion laws.
Yes.
No big deal. As a teenager, my period would be like, okay, it's been 2 months. Okay, it's been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so that's why I went on birth control.
Yes.
Like, I was kind of maybe thinking about becoming sexually active, but I was really like, I am going to kill myself.
This is horror.
if this doesn't stop freaking
I
out.
need my body to stop bleeding
I need
sometimes.
to stop staining my jeans.
Yeah. So that's something that I definitely want to highlight to people who don't have uteruses. Like, this is not every 4 weeks. Oh, I know. And people skip periods all the time because of stress levels or things just going on in your lives. Uteruses are not regular.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that was every pregnancy scare I've ever had was like a stress miss period.
Exactly.
It was like, oh, I just started college. I'm dying.
Yeah.
Oh, and maybe I'm pregnant because I'm hungry all of the time and tired all of the time and I haven't had a period in 2 months.
I have an IUD and I scared myself into believing I was pregnant 1 week ago. Like, it's so
Strong baby.
Exactly, right? Like, I immediately was like, I have an ectopic pregnancy. This is where I'm at. This is what's happening. Like,
Well, you can just reimplant that. You can just pull
I
that
will-
thing
I'm
right
gonna-
out and just put it back in.
right in the right spot.
Because that's how that works.
Yeah, no. So I guess my emphasis is just to say, by putting it at 6 weeks, you're giving women or people with uteruses 2 weeks to figure, in theory,
If you're
in
lucky.
in
If
in
you're
the
lucky.
in their brain, right?
on top of this, just to add on,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. So let's say in theory you are regular.
Yes.
You are having a period every 4 to 5 weeks. And you miss it and you catch it at exactly 4 weeks. If you are doing this through your insurance, you still have to go to get an appointment with your GP, get an approval from that GP, who then forwards you to, maybe they do it, or maybe you have to go to another clinic. Most likely in these states and the clinics.
Yes,
that'll
these
perform
bills,
abortions.
you need a second physician, so you now have to set up 2 different doctor's appointments.
Oh, yeah.
And
If you're
if you're
getting an
lucky,
abortion,
this
it's
process
out of pocket.
is-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you are lucky, this process is a minimum of 2 weeks.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's
and also,
literally pushing you so
you
that
can still have a period when you're pregnant. It's not great. It's
Yeah.
a bad thing when that happens.
Yes.
But it is entirely possible
Yeah.
that you can maintain a regular cycle. Like, I have known people who didn't realize they were pregnant until they almost gave birth.
Yeah.
Because they were regular.
Yeah. Yes, that is another thing where that people don't talk about. Where you see like all of these shows that people make fun of, where you're like 6 months pregnant, and I didn't even know. It totally happens because again, uteruses are not regular, and sometimes you have a period every month when you're pregnant.
Yeah, and again, like let's say that you have somebody who hasn't had a period in a while, and then suddenly like they're off of their birth control for whatever reason. They haven't had a period in forever, and now they're pregnant. They don't know that there's a million reasons why this 6-week ban is completely bullshit.
Yeah. It's just not how it works.
It's not how it works. And again, this is a matter of like, you are regulating things that you don't understand.
Yes.
I wonder though, like, I'm sure some of the people sponsoring these bills do understand, but it's just, they realize that a 6-week ban is about as good as a total ban.
Yeah, it's
close as they can get under the current laws.
Exactly. It's more dangerous because it sounds like compromise.
Right.
But it's not. It's technically legal, but it's
in name
missing
only.
the spirit of the
it's
thing.
It's legal in name only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, I guess I had another quick legal question. And so is there, going back to the Supreme Court, is there a world where Roe is overturned but Casey stays, or
I mean, that's
that
technically the world we live in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well,
Casey overturned Roe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh,
yeah.
gotcha.
So like most of Roe was not upheld. Technically.
Okay.
They were like, this is out, this new thing is in.
Yeah.
So Roe's overturned. It's now
Gotcha,
Casey.
gotcha.
Casey's the it girl.
Yeah.
How come no one talks about Casey?
I don't know. Honestly, I think it's because Roe was such a like profound case in that it gave women access to abortion across the state, like across the country. And Casey was just sort of a case that changed the legal analysis. And so lawyers care about it and legislators care about it. But like your average person that's like, I have access to abortion or I don't, cares about Roe.
I see.
Yeah.
Cool.
And also, sorry I keep saying women. I'm thinking about it very womanly, but of course it's anybody with a uterus. A functioning uterus.
Yeah. Uterus havers.
Uterus
you are.
havers.
We see you. We're trying to be better.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue with a lot of these laws is they don't care about trans issues at all. It's not important to them, and so there's all of this erasure that it's happening as they make these bills and say things like pregnant mothers, and that's the other thing is you look at these bills and you look at the way that they specifically word things, and I've been trying to be very careful about saying things like pregnant mothers because it's just a way to trick people's brains into having sympathy or empathy for a baby. If you say a pregnant mother, then you're talking about a baby.
Yeah.
You're not talking about an embryo that has sperm. You know what I mean? It's
a lot of the rhetoric that we use is anti-choice rhetoric, and it's super problematic, and it's very, very difficult to break yourself from it. But essentially, if you think, is this eliciting family thoughts or baby thoughts or, you know, something this weird technically parasite has feelings and love and all of the things that you want personhood to have, it's anti-choice rhetoric.
Yeah.
Because your doctor is going to call it a fetus.
Yeah.
You know, even when you're pregnant because you want it.
Yeah.
Your doctor's going to call it a fetus because that's what it is.
Yeah.
But legislators are going to call it a baby.
Yeah. And even the the way that it's pro-life versus pro-choice. You know, that's
why I've been using anti-choice.
Exactly. No, I think it's, and this is something that I believe that we all have I think there is a lot of common, we agree on a lot of things across the aisle, right? Pro-choice people are not anti-life. We're not going around wanting death for everything, and like we covered previously, like everybody wants less abortion to happen for different reasons. We want less abortion to happen because it's hard uterus havers to have to make that decision, you know, and it gives, like, it has lifelong implications for people who decide to make this choice and decide that it's the best choice for them. So like in theory, it wouldn't have to be there, but it needs to be there because it needs to be an option for people. There are so many reasons why it needs to be an option. It just is. I feel for people who need to make this decision.
And honestly, I'm kind of done even having the conversation of, oh, I'd like to have less abortions, because I think that that's just another anti-choice rhetoric. Like, I do understand, like, less unplanned pregnancies are better, less unwanted pregnancies are better, but on the principle of it, if you are using abortion as a contraceptive method, I support your right to choice, you know, like, because every time we say abortion's okay until, we are giving more to the anti-choice movement.
Totally. I think, that's a really good point to bring up.
I would medically advise against it.
I mean, yeah. I think,
but abortion is literally safer than giving birth. You know?
As saying that, like, the morning after pill, which is not abortion, so the morning after pill or abortion is your primary source of contraception, like, you may have that choice. I would just medically advise against it. Like, there are safer ways. Like, an abortion is definitely safer than pregnancy, but...
Sure, but
I'm
not
less
having
safe than
to,
other
like...
contraceptives.
Yeah.
Sure,
but contraceptives fail. And then again, you go back to we need access to abortion, period.
Yes.
And the, like, whether or not it's healthy for you is a conversation that needs to be reserved for you and your doctor.
Yes.
Totally. And I think Alex's point is that when we, it makes sense to say that we want to keep, we want to limit abortions to as few as possible, but I do think that when we say that, we are giving fuel to the anti-choice side, because that's treating it like it's something that is, like, somehow worse than getting your tonsils removed or getting a gallbladder taken out. It's even less invasive than that because it's not really surgery. So
I guess for me, it's less the physical, though, and the emotional.
I think for some people, it's not an emotional issue, though. You know? There are definitely people who have abortions and then come away from it and are like, yeah, I'm literally fine. And a lot of the emotion is a societal impact thing, because you spend your whole life being told that abortion is wrong. Or sometimes it's a strong connection to the placenta. It's a person to person basis. Yeah. But again, that's a conversation that should be reserved for the abortion receiver and the abortion provider.
Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah, the negative effects of abortion, I think, are all social, or almost entirely social, and imposed through the stigma and shame that surrounds it, and so.
Yeah, it's not like there aren't medical risks, as there are with literally any medical procedure. But they are so minimal compared to other medical procedures that I think making such a big deal out of them becomes another anti-choice rhetoric kind of issue.
So this is an interesting thing. So when the Alabama law was officially passed, I was driving up to a meeting in Glendale. Which is
Where were you when the Alabama law?
Never forget.
Never forget.
And I'm just listening. I'm not even listening to NPR. I'm listening to, like, just your standard run-of-the-mill rock station, right? And they have 3 hosts, and they're like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to call a doctor. And we're going to talk about what just happened in Alabama, right? Oof. On your standard
That's kind of cool, actually.
Show.
That's kind of cool.
It blew my mind. It was a world I never thought I would ever be living in.
California.
Right? And granted, I live in Los Angeles, which is a nice little liberal bubble. I mean, we're a stone's throw away from one of the most conservative portions of the country, but LA County, you're still...
We do see that Ben Shapiro ad on the freeway all the time.
Nice.
So, anyway, they bring on the doctor, and he is giving his opinion on it, and his main opinion is, like, this is sadder for the greater portion of the country, but in California we're fine, which is kind of a rhetoric that gets tossed around a lot in this state, and I'm kind of against it, because not everyone gets to move to the state they want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have to live in the state that they're at for job purposes, or for their kids, or for family. Like, there's a million reasons why you have to live somewhere.
Or maybe you don't want to leave your state.
Yeah.
Also,
You
yes.
shouldn't have to leave a place because you've lost your rights.
Yeah.
Also, yes.
Yeah, very yes.
But this doctor is going on about what is actually going to happen. His main concern is if it does get illegal, then the pills are going to be sold on the dark web, and it's going to be super unsafe because they're unregulated. But his number one point of anger was that this is a total inappropriate legal outreach into what should be a private relationship between doctor
And patient.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And as someone who is in the legal field, what is kind of your opinion of when certain legal aspects get into these breaches of right to privacy?
Well, so I'm like your right proper liberal. So I am all about regulation of like businesses, of safety things. So, you know, if you've got regulations that are like doctors got to wash their hands because oh my god. but I'm really against legislating things on moral grounds. I don't think that your morals should be imposed on other people. And so there are certain fundamental morals that I think get more difficult. Like, you know, whether or not you should murder becomes really complicated when you're talking about abortion or capital punishment or eating meat or
Yeah.
But I definitely think that, like, one of the problems, again, goes back to regulating things that you don't understand. You know, like, I'm pretty into, like, regulating businesses because I don't think that, like, an unharnessed business will roam in a good direction. But I don't think that you should be regulating individuals. And I guess something abortion providers are businesses, but I don't think that you should ever be regulating something that you don't understand. You know, it's the same thing with the problem of, like, regulating the internet. A lot of legislators have no idea what they're doing.
It's been fun watching the interviews of Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. No, like, they have no idea.
No clue what's happening.
Because they're a bunch of old people that need to have their grandkids come over and teach them how to use the emails on their smartphone.
Yeah.
And so they have no idea how the internet works. And same thing, old white men have no idea how the uterus works. And so, you know, whether or not I'm pro-regulation, I'm very, very against people that have no idea what they're talking about regulating.
Yeah.
Definitely.
This is very much the conservative tactic on lowering unwanted pregnancies and abortions and all of that, right? But there's all of this proof that liberals tend to use about education and information and free contraception that actually impacts the number of abortions that happen in this country every year. And you can actually see upswings whenever there is a very conservative government in the rate of abortions. More happen because we are doing things like taking away education and saying, no, we're only going to teach abstinence, and that doesn't work, and that leads to spikes in abortion. So that's what I want to talk
be the
about.
premise of this whole goddamn show.
Right, exactly. Maybe why we're here. So I really want to end with, like, here are all of the different ways that actually impact the number of abortions that are going to happen in this country, because these bills aren't going to impact. They're not really going to have a real impact. They're just going to impact how many legal and safe abortions are going to happen. We're just going to see a spike and a retrograde
In dangerous abortions.
which
are the ones that are awful and not okay.
Yes.
And lead to death.
Yes. Yeah. So I think like that's what I really want to end on is like I let's focus on things that actually have an impact on what you want. You know, like what your
If you want to reduce
objective
abortion,
is. Yeah.
increase contraception,
Exactly.
and education, and
Yes. And there are so many studies that I can reference. I'm going to link information about the statistics in the Netherlands and Holland because
they're nailing it.
they're killing it, man. They are doing so, it's absurd how different the rate of abortion is there, where they have free contraceptions for all, free abortion for all, and still per capita so much less than the United States.
You know, I've actually, while doing research on abortion in law school, that was one of the weirdest things that I found was we are the only country that simultaneously wants more pregnancies and doesn't. Sorry. I'm explaining this badly. So they used the examples of basically like your high tier European, the Netherlands.
Yes.
And China, which has like a very pro one child laws. And so they're a lot more pro abortion there. Abortion is very, very, very easily accessible in China. But they also are, you know, trying to reduce their population. They're trying to decrease the number of children that they have. Whereas in Europe, they are actually trying to increase their population for certain reasons that happen with, you know, wealthy countries and population growth. So abortions are actually kind of harder to get in Europe. They're at least not nearly as freely given away as they are in China. However, their reduction of abortion methods are a lot more substantial than America, where, you know, contraception and education are a thing. We simultaneously don't want you to have an abortion and don't want you to have the things that make it so that you're less likely to have an abortion.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're definitely not the only country that does that. I misspoke,
But yes.
but we're one of the only like big, you know, modernized countries, developed countries that has that.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, that contradiction speaks to the hollowness of a lot of the, at least at the top level, the anti-choice movement is because if they really wanted to limit abortion, they would, you know, they would look at what works,
Contraception,
and they would
education,
they would provide better sex education and provide access to contraception, but they are very clearly against that. And so to me, like, I'm sure a lot of the right-wing base, like the conservative base, actually believe this rhetoric, but like the people in charge of the movement, the people who sponsor the bills, they clearly don't. Like it's clearly just a grift that they're using to get a little bit of enough popular support so that they can pass these bills that control people. Like it's all about controlling uterus havers, women, queer and trans people who are already outside of the power structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, if you have a uterus, you are a marginalized class.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's the way they like it. They want to control you.
I also think that this is a really great way to point out that so there are legislators that I completely think are ill-intentioned with these bills, right? Like, I think that it is a power thing. I think that it is telling uterus havers, in their minds, women, what they can and cannot do and what is okay, and there's all of the power games there. I also think that there's plenty of conservative America who legitimately struggles with this because they see life at conception. Right. And I think that these two things are very different. So as I aggressively am opposed to all of the legislation that has been proposed and think that it's dumb and written by people who have no idea what they're talking about, it is different than the people who might be in support of these bills for different reasons, and maybe and that's why I want this to be a conversation with our listeners. That's why I want our listeners that have the other perspective to talk to us, send us an email, tweet at us, dangerous. But like, I want this to be a conversation, because I think that a lot of this is rhetoric. A lot of the things that are creating all of this opposition is just rhetoric, and that's why I keep coming back to, I think we want a lot of the same things. We want to spread education. We want to make it okay for people to better their lives, is really what this comes down to. But yeah.
That was I think that the greatest lesson I learned in law school was in my reproductive rights seminar. And I learned that you can have different fundamental beliefs and both be right.
Yeah.
And it was, it was like the Hobby Lobby case that I was talking to one of the main religious freedom lawyers. He
Interesting.
He actually was on the case for Hobby Lobby. And for me, my fundamental value was women's rights and reproductive freedom and reproductive health care. And for him, it was religious freedom. And we were both right. And it was very strange. And so, from that level, I do understand, if you think that a fetus is a living baby, then that's probably pretty horrific to think about abortion.
Right.
And
yeah, they're definitely behaving in a morally consistent fashion if they really believe that. And that's the kind of person I'd like to reach out to and say that if you really look at it, I think you've been tricked, because you're just tricked by these power-hungry politicians who just want to control people, because the Bible doesn't say when life starts. We've been having the discussion about when life starts, when a fetus becomes a baby, when it becomes a person. We've been having this debate for thousands and thousands of years, and it's you personally have not made that decision yourself. I guarantee you that you don't have a monopoly on the truth in this situation. So you need to look at what works, and if you really want to reduce abortion, then you need to support education and contraception, because there's nothing else that works.
Yeah. Can I tell a personal story that has nothing to do with the law?
Oh, sure.
Please do.
So I was a prime candidate for abortion. And I don't resent that. A lot of people are like, well, what if you had been aborted? And that's the argument.
Right.
And my mom was a single mom. My mom was in college. My mom was 20 when I was born. And my biological dad basically pieced out right after knocking up my mom. And my mom went from having a full scholarship to not, and taking an extra year to graduate, and all of the hard things that come with being a single mom. And so I actually regularly give my mom shit for not aborting me. But the thing is that my mom loved me so much. And the lesson that I took from that is that a fetus should not inherently have the right to life. A child should have the right to be wanted.
Yes.
Because a child born to a forced, unwanted pregnancy is not going to have a happy life.
Yeah.
And you need to think about, if you're going to be pro-life, you need to think about the life that you are advocating for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm in a similar situation to you, because my mom also in college. My mom was 20, and the two of us. This didn't end up being in the pregnancy episode because she asked me to not bring it up, but she did make it clear that, and I am allowed to talk about this. My mom is pro-choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She is pro women doing what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
She was in a position where it was inconvenient to have a child at 20. she was really worried about how it would impact her professional life, and luckily she was able to figure it out. But at the same time, my mom wasn't really in any form of dangerous position. My grandparents were crazy wealthy, and she was okay.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, my dad married her and stuck around, and so it worked for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I am okay with that working. I also would have been okay had I not existed, because I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like, if I had been
bother you.
aborted, I don't think I would care.
Yeah, I would not. It would not bother me. It's like people who say, "Well, what if you had been aborted? Aren't you lucky?" Well, it's like saying, "Well, what if I had been conceived on a different day
Yeah.
by a different sperm cell? It would have been a different person."
Yeah.
So I don't know. That doesn't hold much water at all for me.
Well, and I get a little bit more frou-frou spiritual with it, in the sense that, like, I think people exist in the situation that they're supposed to exist in.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom is kind of very frou-frou spiritual. And she's like, if I hadn't have had you then, I would have had you at a different time.
That's kind of how my
she
mom
looks
is.
at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like, for her, my existence isn't that specific sperm and egg. It would have been a different sperm and egg, and everything would have been okay.
That's kind of what my mom thinks.
Yeah, and if you do believe in kind of the inherent being of a soul, I think that if you think that fetus is a child and it gets aborted, that soul hopefully lives on in a better life than the mom knew would have been existence for it.
Yeah.
In the same way that a child needs to be wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because I feel terrible about this, but like every aborted child is the potential child that's going to grow up to cure cancer.
According to the rhetoric, yeah.
But that's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's so much focus on what was it that I was listening to that talked about how fetuses are the ideal victim to fight for.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't have opinions.
They can't demand they can't demand anything from you if you're being problematic.
Yeah. They're not problematic at all. They're completely innocent because they don't exist, so they've never done anything before. Yeah, right. So it's like, it's really interesting to me because yes, they're the perfect victim in theory. But then as soon as it becomes a baby, it's conservatives who don't want to spend the money on the life and the care afterwards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if you're saying that I'm pro-life, back to your idea of you have to understand the consequences of a forced pregnancy coming to term for an unwanted baby, we're talking about we're talking about a lot of cases where moms that aren't prepared to be moms or parents who aren't prepared to be parents, it can get abusive. It can be neglectful. You can go into the foster care system, which we can all agree is a broken system. It can produce really great things, and adoption can be really great. But also, adoption is way too expensive. Why does it cost somebody so much money to try and take in a child that is in our foster care? You know, like that's... Sorry?
Sorry, finish.
My rant, my ongoing rant. But like, there's so many things that happen once they're babies that we're not willing to protect them or care for them for. And it's so crazy to me that the line really does happen at fetuses are so easy to protect. Babies are a little more complicated.
Yeah.
So I have some statistics on the adoption situation.
Yeah.
Because that's, like, I think a huge
counter-argument
point that pro or anti-choicers like to bring up is that a baby can always be adopted. So only, according to AdoptionNetwork.com and PBS, only 2% of Americans adopt total.
Yeah.
1 out of 25 Americans with children have adopted, also known as 4%.
Yeah.
So it's a really
I'm
minuscule
adopted.
number.
Yay. Yay. No, I mean, and it is an awesome option. You know what I mean? Like, no pro-choice person is saying oh my God, rather abort that baby instead of giving it up. No, if that's an option for you, if you are willing to go through that, that's great. And I totally support your decision. But again, this all comes down to it's everybody's personal decision, what is right for them.
Yeah. And
But
like you
also-
might be able to adopt out that baby should not be a reason to force somebody to remain pregnant if
Exactly.
they don't want to be.
But
That is
also
some
there's a
Geneva
pretty
Convention
big-
level shit.
Yeah.
There's also a pretty surprisingly big chance that child might not get adopted.
Right.
Because at any given time, there are nearly 400,000 children in the foster care system.
Yeah.
And there are only, of those 400,000 children, 100,000 to 110,000 are eligible for adoption because there's a lot of kids in the foster care who are temporarily removed from their parents for
Right.
reasons.
Or their parents just haven't had their ties severed. You know,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
like a weird foster parent with some visitation rights stuff.
Yeah.
I do a lot of juvenile law.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the area of law
So-
that I actually practice.
So of the 100,000 and 110,000 who are eligible for adoption, only half get adopted every year.
Yeah.
And
That's
roughly
better than I
every
thought
single-
it was. If I'm being frank.
Yeah.
And roughly, and here's where it gets difficult, because if you go on these websites, it's really hard to find out what percentage of babies never get adopted. And I think a huge part of it is a lot of these websites are to kind of promote pro-adoption, and they're trying to keep like a really positive attitude, and I understand that. But there is a genuine concern of how many of these kids are being forced to be born and forced to never have parents.
Yeah.
And from what I can tell, 25 on average, 20 to 25,000 kids leave the foster system.
Age out.
Age
out.
Yeah, aging out of the foster care system is really, really difficult because
So-
you're never really given the proper parenting.
And you're never really like
the
there's
government
such a
is not good
lack
at raising people.
of education about like what next steps is. You just like you pop out and you don't know what you're doing. Like it's not like these people are better equipped at being 18 years old and taking on the world.
Yeah, and like kids that age out of the foster care system, they have bad chances because shit's just bad for them. Like
Yeah.
they don't have a proper support system to fall back on is a huge one. You know, if if the government was your parent and then you're 18, we're not your parents anymore, then who's your support system?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also, like, you know, you weren't raised with, like, certain education tools or certain, like, familial tools and relationship tools. And, like, there's just so many things. The government's not good at raising people. The government can't build a bridge. They're not going to raise, like, fully functioning, amazing human beings. And, like, that's not to say that people that age out of the foster care system aren't good people. It's just the government was probably not a good parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to emphasize, like, adoption is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I have several friends who were adopted, and they're lovely, lovely people. You know, like, I'm not here to shut down adoption. My bigger point is, at the rate of kids who never get adopted, with our situation for abortion as it currently is, if it's going to get more restrictive, that number is going to go up. And it's just going to be a downfall.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
going
gonna
to
get
inflate the problem.
like
Or we're going to have more
See-
dead pregnant people.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, I
That-
mean,
yeah,
that's
that's something we haven't
100% what
discussed
we're going
yet.
to have.
Yeah.
because pregnancy is still really dangerous. I mean, historically, lots of women have died in childbirth or from complications due to pregnancy, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
still kind of risky. Or I guess I just wanted to chime in and say that every anti-choice person pictures adoption going like Juno, where the kid goes to the nice, like,
Perfect mom.
well-off, clean white
Mhm.
family, and it's happily ever after, but that it's just far from the truth.
Mhm.
And so, like, you know, if you're using adoption as your excuse to support your anti-choice beliefs, then you have to really think about how that works. And again, like, if you want to be anti-choice and morally consistent, then you also need to support. Not only do you need to support contraception and education, but you need to support, like, You need to support welfare. You need to support
Reproductive healthcare in general.
subsidized childcare.
Yeah.
You need to support. You should probably be might as well be supporting single payer because that's going to help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
I would encourage you to examine your beliefs and think if you are reacting in like a knee-jerk way or if you're reacting in a logically and morally consistent way.
Yeah, like if you are anti-choice, but you're also pro-birth control, and you are pro-welfare, pro-paid maternity and paternity leave,
Mm-hmm.
if you are pro-accessible education to everyone, alright, and you are pro-families with low income to no income having health care, then I can see where you're morally coming from.
I don't agree with you, but I at least respect you. But if you don't
you have
all...
consistent values.
Yes, like...
that is we have different fundamental beliefs, but we're both right. Kind of consistent values.
But if you don't have all those ducks in a row, then I would just encourage you to really examine what you believe.
I think it's...
would love to talk to you. I would love to have a discussion.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come out right out and say it. I believe that if you are anti-birth control and anti-abortion, you are probably anti-woman.
Yeah.
Because you've taken away all access of her being able to control her own destiny.
Bodily autonomy, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's... A lot of the rhetoric is based on this weird, privileged belief of... I have this perfect life and I behaved this way, and if I behaved this way, then nothing bad will happen, and if you behave this way, then nothing bad will happen to you. Just kind of an unwillingness to see yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah.
But full on, if you are anti-birth control and anti-abortion, you really just want women to be barefoot and pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you should just come out and say it.
Just come out and say it. You
Just come out and
want,
say it,
a puritanical system where where the women are just popping out babies and cooking you dinner.
especially, okay, so in a world where we still have conservative listeners listening to us, thank you. But a lot of this, I have to say, is this morality is coming from Christian America. And so, like, I'm sure we have hit so many buzzwords for people to tune out, where we keep talking about like white liberal
or to hate listen.
Yeah, exactly. Or
hate listen.
Yeah,
Ooh,
absolutely. Where we keep saying like, white Christian men and things like that. But here's the thing, that's where it's really stemming for. And I've had this conversation with a Jewish friend of mine, and it's like abortion is far less a controversy in the Jewish faith. This is coming
way
from
more okay with abortion.
White Christian America. That is where the morality argument is coming from.
My professor of my reproductive health seminar was a Jewish woman.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the difference. So like when we keep saying like this is your morality, this is your religion, we're really talking about Christianity.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So the other debate I got into with this, and they have like no powerful standing in America, but I once got into a debate with a Buddhist about this because their primary belief is
do no harm.
And there is kind of an argument in that of like what is causing harm at that point. But also, if you're Buddhist, you do believe in birth control. So
also, I feel like forcing a pregnancy is harmful.
Yeah,
we got into a huge debate. It was
That seems like the harm.
Because that's where it goes for me is like, sure, you're killing a thing, but isn't torturing the spirit also an important implication?
I think another...
And if that child really isn't wanted, or if it's born into an abusive partnership, or in a situation where they cannot provide a life for this child, like that is doing harm.
Abusive relationships is one of the big things that I picked up with my dissertation, was things like waiting periods make it very, very difficult for people in abusive relationships to obtain abortion services.
Yeah,
because
to get out
you
once.
You have to sneak out and sneak over to the clinic, and then you have to get all of this reading material and have them guilt trip you about how that's a baby. And then you have to go back and you have to sit with your partner for 72 hours, and you have to sneak out again at exactly 72 hours.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you really want a child born into that?
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, and any final thoughts, any way to wrap up? Marcy?
Well, I mean, what's great is we had a lot of your outline and my outline had many of the same things. So I wanted to end with female bodily autonomy, which we covered, and we talked about the whole organ donor thing.
Oh, yeah.
Also on my dots. I got you, girl. But yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people are coming at this thinking that it's all, these unwanted pregnancies are all people who are out partying and are out doing these bad, quote unquote, bad things, right? And that actions have consequences and all of these different arguments.
Just
Sure.
close your legs if you don't want to get pregnant.
Exactly. Blah, blah, blah. All of that. That's not it. And I think I really want to make sure that we're highlighting that plenty of responsible human beings who are using birth control end up in a situation like this.
You mean like my mom?
Yeah. Like these are complicated things that happen. You can't separate all of the people having abortions into all of those irresponsible humans who aren't following my statutes of morality. There are mothers who have children who get an abortion because they
don't want any more.
They don't want any more. They can't afford any more. There are so many different
They're
reasons.
happy with their family.
They're
as it
happy
is.
with their family as it is.
Yeah, actually, just to interrupt a little bit, I'm looking at the Guttmacher Institute's website, who does a lot of research.
So much research from them when I wrote my paper.
And they are saying right on their homepage that 59% of women obtaining abortions are mothers. So people who already have children.
They're like, okay, I'm good.
Getting abortions.
We Gucci.
Well, it's because, and I mean, my mom was this case. I know several other mothers who are this case. I several family members who are this case. It's very easy to get pregnant right after you've given birth. And when I say right after, I mean in like that 3-month period.
Mm-hmm.
But like
Irish twins.
when you're a new mother with a newborn,
my favorite racial slur.
Oh, God.
But like when you're a newborn with a new mother with a newborn, like birth control isn't the first thing on your mind. You've got a million other things, and that's kind of why it happens. And I think how women end up in this situation. And on top of these statistics, 1 in 4 women will have an abortion in their lifetime. And I'm going to guess to our listeners, you know more than 4 women.
Yeah.
What?
Not the people
Not the
writing
legislators.
these bills.
I don't know that they
do.
do.
They only know one woman.
Yeah.
or at least they don't think that they're women, but they're like incognito so that they'll get any respect from them.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like, I know more than 4 women, and I can't say that I know all that many people who are that are open
Yes.
about having one. And it's because there's so much
It's a stigma.
social stigma
It's
and
scarlet
so
letter.
much social pressure where you don't want to open up to someone and say, I had an abortion, because you don't know what their reaction is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so much social pressure to have in your head.
Yeah.
And it's so much to live with, especially if you do feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
Like if you know it was the right choice, but you still have this underlying guilt about what happened because of everything you were told growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Or even
And
just knowing the social repercussions.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be guilt. It just knowing the society we live in.
Yeah.
Also, yes.
Yeah.
And so I want to say to all the women out there who are listening to this, if you want someone to talk to who's not going to judge you, who's just going to listen and let you say what you need to say, I'll listen.
Yeah. Yes, I also support that message, and I support you. Like, as you said, Alex, like for a lot of, for many women, it may not be something that it might be okay, you know, and that's great for them. And I also want to support you and hear your story as well. But if there are women that are feeling guilt or feeling like they don't have somebody that they can talk to, or that they had to go through this whole thing alone, which I can't. We support you, and we're here and happy to hear your story.
Yeah, and you can toss them my way too, even though I'm, not part of your podcast. I am pro-choice AF.
Yeah.
So I will gladly validate you in your decisions of bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
Whatever that decision was, because you know what? It's not my damn business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Or-
forgive me for repeatedly saying women when I mean people with uteruses. I'm sorry.
We are trying so
We're
hard,
trying.
listeners.
I promise I'm trying.
But also on the flip side of this, if you did go through with it, and you are now being shamed for being a single mother, and you are now being shamed
Right?
because you have this child, I'm also here for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Because I freaking love kids. I do.
You do.
Me not so much, but
I like
And
other
if-
people's children.
yeah, sometimes
I want to hand them back when they start crying.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's impossible. You can't win. You
No.
can't win if you had one. You can't win if you didn't.
No.
Mhm.
That's the way they like it.
Yep.
And by
Yeah.
they, I mean the rich white men in charge.
Yeah.
Rich old white men in
And
charge.
I mean, that goes back to the whole...
And their token female traitors.
Yeah, they're one female bill writer and they're one female bill signer, and
yeah,
they can get a couple of ladies up front for the photo op
exactly.
so that you can pretend that it's not a bunch of dogs regulating a cat.
That was a great meme.
That was a good meme.
Our Instagram is going to be memes.
Good, as podcasters do.
Yeah,
If you have a story or if you just have no one else to talk to, please reach out to us. You can email us anonymously, remedialsexed@gmail.com. We would just love to hear from you. Yeah. You can also tweet us. Tweet at us.
yeah.
If you want something a little bit more private,
Yeah.
we understand.
Yeah.
If you're currently going through this, I'm sorry you're in this situation, and I am excited for you as you make the best decision possible for you.
Hopefully,
Hopefully.
yeah. As long as you don't.
Let's see
have
how this
that right
legislation
completely
happens.
thrown away.
Yeah. All right.
Big heavy.
Now
Big
I'm going to
heavy.
pet a dog.
Is that really why you had me on? Is so that I could be here for the big heavy?
I mean, you're very good at handling it.
You're
are-
like,
you
this
are
isn't
good at the
about
big
Alex
heavy.
being a lawyer. This is about Alex being like all about that tough shit.
I really wanted your first episode on here to be about criminal sex laws.
Oh boy, howdy,
I
I got
thought
some
that
stuff for that.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to come on again,
Sure.
we'll have to figure that shit
I
out.
love criminal sex laws. I mean, I don't, but I'm happy to give you some opinions about them.
Again, one more time, thank you, Alex.
Yay!
Lovely to see you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having
thank you so
me.
much.
I'm Megan.
I'm Marcella.
And I'm Colin.
You will agree that the
Thanks
Thanks
concept
for joining us.
of
Thanks for sitting through the Big Heavy. 2 episodes of Big Heavy.
You don't have to think about that.
Yeah.